Well, hello folks. This is Freelance Medical Writing and Editing. I am Phil Lindeman. I am myself the owner of Liberty Medical Communications, which is a freelance medical and writing, freelance medical writing and editing company. That's a mouthful. You know, I have been telling people for some time that I have a great deal of difficulty explaining exactly what it is that I do, because there's no simple way to describe the medical communications business. Because first of all, the entire industry is so broad and the definition is so broad that, you know, if I just said, you know, I'm in mergers and acquisitions, you may not understand what mergers and acquisitions are. I confess that I'm not really sure what those are, but, you know, if you say that, people kind of nod and said, okay, yeah, I've heard of that. Medical communications, no idea. It's very broad. Like, for example, because a particular specialty of mine is preparation of documents for people who don't speak English as a first language, particularly from Brazil, that's sometimes what I say, is I help people get stuff published who don't speak English as a first language. And sometimes eyebrows go up because there's some glimmer of recognition in there, and sometimes there isn't. And that's just the name of the game. So I'm appealing to you guys for help. If there's an easy way to describe what it is that we do, that I do for a living, I'd be grateful to you. So in today's episode, I am going to be focusing on self-valuation, valuing yourself as a freelancer. And I have several things that I want to tell you about that. But first, I want to tell you this. So as you may know, if you know any pediatricians, I am a pediatrician. Pediatricians can be characterized several ways, but there are two particular attributes of pediatricians that I would like to point out to you. One is that we tend to be charitable giving people. We like to give back to the community. I mean, basically what we're doing is we're helping care for children, you know, the medical aspects of their lives, but pediatricians find themselves with time on their hands because, thank goodness, children tend to be among the healthiest human beings on the planet. And in 2020, when this podcast is being recorded, by any objective measure, children are the healthiest human beings who have ever lived on planet Earth. And that's not just Pollyannish, pie-in-the-sky optimism. That's verifiable fact. And I can bring facts to the table if you care to hear them. Take my word for it for now, for the purposes of this story. So pediatricians have time on their hands, and we like to give back to the community. And the other thing is, and I can say this as a pediatrician, it's when others say this, you know, I get it gets my hackles up. But we tend to have, there is a substantial number of pediatricians who have, I should say, a rather poor self-image. And that is that we consider ourselves inferior to, shall we say, some of our colleagues in the medical profession. And some of that is generated by these other colleagues. I'm not going to mention any other named surgeons, but a lot of it is self-generated, and we think of this ourselves the way that we do because we tend not to have terrifically high opinions of ourselves. So we are willing to do things that perhaps are, shall we say, I don't know, less dignified than others might do. So a colleague of mine and I are doing some volunteering in a city, and what this volunteering involves is the collection of garbage for the community, because we care about our community. The children play on the street. We don't want the children to be playing in garbage. So once a month, generally a weekday when we're not working, we rent one of these old-fashioned garbage trucks. And I need to describe what these are. These aren't one of these trucks with these automatic lifting things that pick up a dumpster and hermetically squirrel away the garbage into a tight container where you can't even smell it going down the street. No, I am talking about an old-fashioned open at the top truck into which you need to toss the garbage and hope that it stays there. Now, what happens at the end of a long run is the garbage starts to rise up to the top, and as the truck is going down the street, if the level of the garbage is too high, it begins to fly off onto the street, thereby reversing the hard work that we've been doing, collecting garbage and making our streets more beautiful. So we take turns once every other month when the garbage gets too high. Somebody needs to get out of the passenger side, generally it's not the person who's driving, go to the back of the truck, climb up on top of the truck, and lie on top of the garbage with their body spread-eagled, arms out, legs out, to hold the garbage down and keep it from flying away. So one day it's my turn. It's at the end of the run, still plenty of sunshine, there's still plenty of people on the street. There are folks hanging out of windows, sometimes smoking cigarettes, just watching traffic and watching people watching, garbage watching. And I'm up on top of this truck, and it's the end of our run, and I am lying out there, and I got my arms out, and I got my legs out, and we drive past a building where I know I've got some families, and there's the mother of one of the children I take care of, and her husband is leaning out the window with him, and as we're driving by, she nudges him with her elbow, and she says, "Will you look at that? Somebody threw out a perfectly good pediatrician." Okay, folks, that's a joke. It's not really about me, but it is a... no joke is made funnier by having to explain it, but that is a joke that you can adapt several different ways, but really what it's about is about valuation of human beings and valuation of ourselves as freelancers. And there is a truth about freelancers, which is not true of all freelancers, but it has been true of me at various times in my career, and I hope that it is not true of you. And if it is true of you, I would like to sort of change your attitude about this. And that is that you have value. What you provide to the community in terms of your skill, knowledge, and experience has value that people are willing to pay for. And you would be surprised how much they're willing to pay for it. The key is going to be obtaining getting a client to know, like, and trust you. That's a topic for another podcast. But today, what I want to talk about is taking yourself to the next level. If you are a freelancer, to take yourself to the next level, and what the next level is a medical communications company. So, let me tell you a little illustrative example about taking yourself to the next level, and this comes from my experience in the field of medicine. When I was a medical student, there was a principle at the time of when you were doing your hospital rotations and you are a student, we were encouraged to imagine that we were not medical students, but rather the next level up, which was a medical intern, which is an actual doctor who was what's referred to as the house staff of a hospital. By the way, when is this? I'm talking about the Columbia University Medical Center, as it was called at the time, and this is the mid-1980s when I trained. But I would be surprised if this were not today the way that medical education, the way that medical trainees are formed. So, for example, a medical student tags along behind the team and watches the interns and the residents as they do their case presentations, watches as they do their medical examinations of patients, and watches while they make notes in the chart. Now, there was a time when we actually made notes in the chart, because there were charts and we had pens and we made notes in them. I understand that medical records are now 100% electronic. Listen, when I had my practice, I never had charts. I was sort of at the beginning of the wave, but we did all medical electronic medical records. But at the time, we wrote notes in the chart, so it doesn't matter. I'm sure that today at Columbia, all the staff are doing their note writing in charts, and somebody teaches you how to do it, just as somebody taught us to write notes. Somebody is teaching how to do entry into EMRs, electronic medical records. Be that as it may, the first day that you show up, an intern sort of takes you aside and says, "Look, this is what's going to happen. I do rounds, that is, we call pre-rounds, which is when you go around and see the patients before the team actually does rounds, and you're going to go and introduce yourself to the patient, examine them, and write a note, because that's what I do." And they teach you how to do it. They teach you how to write these notes. And what they are, in a sense, teaching you how to do is how to be them. I mean, you're a medical student, but you're raising yourself to the next level. And the idea is, so why do you do this? Is when you actually do become an intern, you already know how to do it. You've taken yourself to that next level. Now, what do the interns and the residents do? They are teaching themselves, or as the case may be, being taught how to raise themselves to the next level. And what is the next level? It's an attending physician. Now, the attending physician is in charge, so to speak. They sometimes are the ones who do billing, but primarily what they are responsible for is making the plan, and that is what is going to happen to this patient. How are they going to be treated? What are the criteria for their discharge, and when are they going to be discharged? That kind of thing. So what a house officer does, an intern and a resident, is they attempt to raise themselves to the next level by making plans. And this is, so they're really sort of training their brain. They're taking themselves to the next level, imagining what are they going to do when they get to that point. And by the time they get there, they already know. Now, here's the thing about what we do. If you're a freelancer and you want to be a medical communications company, you don't need to fake it. Now, this is the beauty of the internet. If you do these things, these tasks, be it writing, editing, translating, what have you, illustrating, right? You may call yourself a freelancer, but it is trivially easy, and I'm choosing this word carefully, trivially easy to present yourself to the community as a medical communications company. It is even possible to arrange your finances as a company, not as an individual. Now, I am not a financial advisor. I am not giving financial advice. At some point in a future podcast, I may discuss formation of a business, but I will say that I will not tell anybody how to do this. I may at some point explain to you how I did it and the advantages that accrue to you when you do this. And there are many advantages, don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. The point is that you don't need to spend money. I mean, depending on where you live, you don't need to spend any money making yourself into a company with a website and all of the trappings thereof that the big companies have, such that from the outside you are indistinguishable from a medical communications company. Now, why is this important? It is legitimacy. Clients want to do business with established practices, and this is sort of the key word, established. A freelancer, an individual who's sitting in an apartment in a city in Massachusetts, just for example, which is what your host is doing at this time, may not have the same kind of cachet as say, let's say if you call them, why don't we call it Liberty Medical Communications LLC? Now, I'm not lying to anybody. My company is called Liberty Medical Communications LLC. It is a legitimate limited liability company listed in the state of Massachusetts. You can look it up, folks. We exist. Now, never mind that this is a legal fiction behind which Dr. Lindeman hides, but I am an employee of my own company and it pays me, etc., etc. Okay. The point is that you can do this too, folks. You can very easily raise yourself to this level of a medical communications company. I know you're saying, nah, you can't do this. No, wait, look. Yes, you can. And if you don't think that you can, I can help you do this. And here's how. Not only does joining the Freelance Medical Writing and Editing Center help you launch on the way, but this is an entree to two things. First, to a forum in a private social media group, which is not encumbered by all of the advertisements and all the nonsense and all the garbage that Facebook and Twitter are encumbered with, where you can share ideas, ask questions, get help from others who are more experienced in this industry than you are. But this community also affords you access to me and to my expertise and to the teaching that I do. Folks, if you like the free or almost free stuff that I offer you in terms of gigs, tips and tricks, videos, teaching content that I give away for free, you're going to love the stuff that my paying clients pay for. The route to get to me is through this Freelance Medical Writing and Editing Center. Now, it's $5 a month, and there is more than $5 a month of content in there. You can join it. You don't have to join it. Doesn't matter. But I'm so confident that you're going to derive value that you can check it out from $0 for one entire month before you get billed the first $5. And after paying for it, even if you don't care for it, if you don't think you're getting even $5 of value from it, listen. If you're not getting $5 of value from it, I would highly doubt that you're actually doing what this forum is designed to foster, which is medical editing and writing. But it isn't even necessarily medical writing. I mean, this can be these skills and tips and tricks that I provide are applicable in a wide variety of fields, not necessarily medical. If you're not getting $5 of value from it, cancel. You can cancel anytime. Okay. We'll be talking more about that later. Next, I want to talk about what's going on in the world of COVID publishing, COVID-19, and there's a site that I like to go to called Retraction Watch, which is a fascinating site. It is, as you might guess, entirely about articles that have been published and are being retracted. And because of this strange new world that we live in early 2020, Retraction Watch has now devoted an entire section to articles about COVID-19 that have been retracted. Now, there is something, I'll put a link to this in the show notes, just as I will put a link in the show notes to the Writing and Editing Center that I've referred to. Now, there are some interesting things that jump out when you look at the COVID-19 articles that have been retracted that Retraction Watch is documenting for us. And that is that I would say, just on my rough count looking at this, 90% of them are from preprint servers. Now, what is a preprint server? A preprint server is a gift of the internet. What the internet allows us to do is to publish your stuff, self-publish, if you will, prior to your material being peer-reviewed. And that means that you put out the data, you can publish your sources of material, you can show your statistics in raw form. The internet allows you to do all of this, to lay it out there and let people look at it. Now, what often happens is that publication in a preprint server is a preliminary step, a kind of a pre-peer review, where if you're the topic of what you're writing about, or if your particular type of research is interesting enough to merit attention, folks are going to look at it and they're going to tear it apart. Now, getting your article torn apart is a mark of your article actually being important enough for people to care about. If you've been doing this business as long as I have, listen, I have done biomedical research. I have published in the biomedical research literature. I know that the overwhelming majority of this stuff is not only garbage, no one is going to read it. And no one's going to read it because it's inconsequential. Now, at some point in the future, if what you have written is published and it's out there, it can be accessible and someone can find it and might find it useful. This is the story of azathioprine, AZT, one of the early drugs for HIV, the human immunodeficiency virus, the causative agent of AIDS, the acquired immune deficiency syndrome. AZT was a molecule that was published. I actually don't remember what its original application was. It was published and left on the shelf because it didn't work very well. But someone found it. And anyway, the point of this is, if it's published, if it's up there, maybe it will have some scientific or medical value in the future and someone can find it. But I'll have to tell you that if an article is retracted, it isn't going to do anybody any good in the future. True or not true. And we're going to be getting into some sort of publication philosophy in a bit. Let me tell you about two articles that have to do with COVID-19 that have been retracted, both of them from China. And both of them have a story to tell. The first article's headline is Lancet Journal retracts letter on coronavirus because authors say it was, quote, not a first-hand account after all. The Lancet Global Health has swiftly retracted a letter to the editor purportedly describing the experience of nurses treating coronavirus in Wuhan, China, just 2 days after it was published, because the authors are now saying it, quote, was not a first-hand account, close quote. In the original letter, the authors write, the conditions and environment here in Wuhan are more difficult and extreme than we ever could have managed. They continue, in addition to the physical exhaustion, we are also suffering psychologically. While we are professional nurses, we are also human. Like everyone else, we feel helplessness, anxiety, and fear. Experienced nurses occasionally find time to comfort colleagues and try to relieve our anxiety, but even experienced nurses may cry, possibly because we don't know how long we need to stay here, and we are the highest risk group for COVID-19 infection. Now, it's compelling, right? Here's the thing. It turns out that perhaps use of the first person was ill-advised, because here's the retraction notice from 2 days subsequent. On February 26, 2020, we were informed by the authors of this correspondence, that's the correspondence I just read to you, that the account described therein was not a first-hand account, as the authors had claimed, and that they wished to withdraw the piece. We have therefore taken the decision to retract this correspondence. Okay. In this case, this is a particular type of scientific malfeasance that in the day-to-day world we refer to as lying. Interesting case. I don't know what compelled these people to position themselves as though they were actually nurses on the front lines in Wuhan, but they did it. And now the article is being retracted. There is another way to deal with this, however, and the way that I would deal with it if I were in their place is I would keep the article up there and publish an addendum, or maybe even put the addendum first and say, look, this was published, but it was retracted because, in fact, it was completely made up. Now, if there are actually authors' names attached to it, I can understand why the authors would, if they were embarrassed and red-faced, as rightly they should be, it should be taken down. So in this case, this is one vote I would say, okay, maybe this should be retracted. If I were the author, I would say, yeah, I'm going to retract it because I said something that was not true. And in a way, this is one of the beauties of the internet, is what can be published can also be taken away. And can be marked, as opposed to a monograph that you might pull off the shelf in the stacks of a library, which is not marked up with the author 1 week later retracted it because he made up all the data, right? And then there is a second one which really caught my attention, which was this is a COVID-19 article, also out of China, which was retracted, but for reasons that, well, let me get to it first, because maybe you will guess as I'm reading this why this article was retracted. This is the title of the article from Retraction Watch. Study claiming broader spread of aerosolized coronavirus is retracted. The article begins, a study which found that aerosolized novel coronavirus could be spread nearly 15 feet, twice what health officials had believed, has been retracted. But the journal isn't saying why. Practical Preventive Medicine published the paper in early March, titled, quote, An Epidemiological Investigation of 2019 Novel Coronavirus Diseases Through Aerosol-Borne Transmission by Public Transport, close quote. The articles from institutions in China looked at the spread of the virus on a bus linked to one infected passenger. According to the abstract, this COVID-19 outbreak was transmitted by a public transport, resulting in 11 confirmed cases, including one asymptomatic case and 2 third-generation cases. The farthest transmission distance of COVID-19 in the airtight air conditioning bus reached 4.5 meters. This contagious virus could float in the air for 30 minutes at least and cause infection. The researchers concluded, the COVID-19 has strong transmissibility and can be transmitted by aerosol in a closed environment. To prevent infection, personal protection should be done well when taking public transports, and the ventilation and fresh air volume in public transports should be guaranteed, and the cleaning and disinfection in the carriage should be done well. Okay, that's the end of the quote. Not surprisingly, the article received a significant amount of attention in the media, including coverage in the South China Morning Post and the Daily Mail, among other outlets. 2 papers even published a schematic of the bus, the researchers described, which Retraction Watch nicely displays at the top of their article, which you cannot see because this is a podcast. The Chinese language journal has stated that it retracted the paper, but the notice doesn't say why. We, meaning Retraction Watch, emailed the publisher for more information but haven't heard back. The corresponding author on the paper did not immediately respond to a request for comment. There have been a handful of COVID-19 studies from China retracted, and speculation that at least some of the moves came after government pressure. Nature reported last week that, and this is a quote, over the past 2 months, it appears to have quietly introduced policies that require scientists to get approval to publish or publicize the results according to documents seen by Nature and some researchers, close quote. What's going on here? The it, by the way, refers to the government of China. Folks, I've said this before, I'm saying it now, and I will likely say it again. It is an understatement to say that science and government make strange bedfellows. Science and medicine don't belong in bed together, and they shouldn't be in bed together. Now, there's a problem. He who pays the piper calls the tune. You may have heard of NIH grants. Government funding of medical and scientific research is not the exception. It is the rule. These folks are writing the checks. And if they are writing the checks, in some sense, depending on the relationship that your government has with the scientific enterprise, in some cases, i.e. China, because the government is writing the checks, they get to say whether or not what you have written is kosher with the government. And this is a problem. It is, in a medical philosophical sense, an affront to the enterprise of the dispassionate pursuit of truth to suppress any kind of speech because it is offensive to the powers that be. This is offensive in itself, and I am offended, and I hope that you're offended too. Now, I mentioned that the overwhelming majority of these retracted papers have been in preprint servers, medRxiv, BioMedRxiv, and SSRV. I'll if I can find the links, I'll put them in your in the show notes. So, a preprint server is a place where papers are put up like dartboards to get darts thrown at them. The fact that papers are being retracted from them, to my mind, must mean that they truly are garbage. Because why would you not submit or subject your work to scrutiny? Because doing so will only make it better if it has merit to begin with. I guess what I'm saying is twofold. I am making a plug for preprint serving, for getting your stuff up there. What I'm talking about is self-publishing, right? These journals will accept, I call them journals, they're servers, in fact, they are computers, will accept your articles and write they should, right? This is just as this is a time now when a person with writing skills and scientific knowledge can sit at home and sell their services in the privacy of their own home to somebody who requires them, who needs them to do their business. Just so, a scientist who is trying to dispassionately pursue the truth can get their stuff out there. They don't require the imprimatur of a medical society, as was the case in the old days, or a journal, to present a paper. It can be put out there for the world to see. One of the causes that I am passionate about, and it's forgive me for saying so, it is one of the gifts that COVID-19 has given to the world, has been exposure, promotion, if you will, of self-publishing. And ironically, this is not a trend which threatens the freelance medical writing and editing world. To the contrary, the more individuals, scientists, scientific groups, physician writers that there are out there who want to get their stuff out there, the more they're going to require the assistance of medical communicators such as ourselves. So the opportunities are only going to blossom. And so, how much more so that you need to rise to the top to take yourself to the next level. And if you want to take yourself to the next level, if you want to position yourself not as a lowly freelance who is captive to one of the major medical communications companies, but to make yourself a medical communications company, then come with me. I'm going to show you how to do this. join the Medical Writing and Editing Center. It's free for the first month. It's $5 after that. You don't have to do it if you don't want to raise yourself to the next level. That's fine. Maybe you just want to hear the joke of the week. That's great. I love to tell them. But if you are serious about raising your own human capital, about lifting yourself to the next level in your career, in terms of your financial status, then come with me. Because when you get in there, what you're going to find is this forum where you are going to tap into, if you will, a community of like-minded individuals, some of whom you can help because you're further ahead on your journey, on your career journey, and others who are further ahead who can help pull you along. And I am one of those individuals. And if you need that help, there is an entree into some of the more involved, shall we say, coaching and teaching that I do. And a lot of this content is in video, and I am confident that you're going to derive value from it. And I will put links to the show. Now, if you have enjoyed what you've heard, I want you to do me a favor. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast with others. And if you do, it is a certainty that I will be back here in 1 week with more stuff. Until then, raise yourself to the next level. Have a great, productive week, and I will talk to you soon.